Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Winter, and I am the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. European regions play a big part in the funding system. First of all, there is a full regional collaboration ecosystem supported by the EU Commission, and on top of that, the regions are establishing collaborative initiatives themselves to complement their individual influencing towards the Commission. One of the regions that puts efforts and capacities into both collaboration and lobbying is Noord-Brabant in the Netherlands. I connected with Alina Totti, who works for Noord-Brabant as policy officer and who is working in the team for international relations. We sat down for a talk about the initiatives and activities that they are involved in to push strategically important areas for the region. This is a very nice conversation. Please enjoy. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Now, today's guest, I've been hunting for a while, and it's like this when you're an independent podcaster. Sometimes you have an idea in your head of what would be a good story or a good content for your listeners out there, my dear community. But that doesn't mean that the potential guest thinks that it's a good idea to join. Or they're busy or they have 10,000 other things to do. And today's guest is not only a professional that works for funding, she's also a politician. And that, of course, complicates things when you need to get an appointment to have a conversation. Now, I've already said way too much before I say hi to my guest. So, Alina, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello,
Nice.
everyone.
It's so nice to have you in. And the first time we spoke on the phone, I was standing in the street in Brussels when I still had a job working there. I was standing in front of the Lego store, buying something for my sweet daughter in there. And so I have reached out to you because you are working for a region in the Netherlands, and you work with funding in that corner, and we're going to get back to that in a second. But first and foremost, can you present yourself shortly to the listeners?
Of course. My name is Alina Totti. I'm originally from Romania, but I'm working for the government of the province of Noord-Brabant, that's in the south of the Netherlands. And I am working in the team for international relations. And that team sits at the intersection of internationalization, European funding, a little bit of European affairs, and of course innovation, because Brabant is a region which is known for its tradition to innovate and is known for its advanced manufacturing. Here we have very interesting OEMs, original equipment manufacturer. This is the land of Philips and ASML and NXP. So it's a very, very interesting area, often mentioned in Brussels, often present in Brussels to tell its own story. And I think we have an interesting story to tell for today about how we approach things that eventually lead to European funding, which is the core of your show.
This is going to be a great conversation. Also because you are a politician. So you're used to speaking publicly because you have to if you have to people to put a cross next to your name when they go to the ballot, right? So
I will not bring politics in the conversation, but I will bring storytelling, because I think storytelling is such an important element of convincing people to do something or informing them about something that is in their interest. So I think no matter what field you work in, now, especially with the advancement of AI, this type of skills of talking, storytelling will become ever more important. That's my 2 cents on the topic.
Amen. And I'm a podcaster, so I need good stories. I need the sort of storytelling for my listeners to get arousing their interest. But just to finish it's not a political podcast naturally, but anyway, she just got elected into the regional government and local government, and congratulations with that. That's always a big accomplishment, especially when you're not a citizen from the country that you are residing in. So well done. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about, we already have some hints for you out there. So we're going to talk about regional collaboration. We're going to talk about the importance of networks, about the importance of relationships, and we're going to talk about a very important topic on call lobbying and long-term call lobbying, strategic approach to shaping what comes out from Brussels. That's the color of today's episode. Many of you will be very interested in what we're going to talk about today. So, and I am at least looking forward to this conversation. So let's just head right at it. First and foremost, Alina, Provincie Noord-Brabant. What is it? Give a profile, a profile of the region. You already gave some hints on high tech.
Yeah, so I've already mentioned that we are a region in the south of the Netherlands. A few cities here would be Eindhoven, where I live, for example, Den Bosch, Breda. This is a region with a very long tradition in can be agriculture, logistics, but now it's very much focused on innovation and advanced manufacturing. And in the Netherlands, every region has its own government and regional parliament. Mm-hmm. So I work in Den Bosch, and that's where we have the building of the government. Where I, as a civil servant, work in the economics department. And in the economics department, we lay down the story about how we want to invest the resources of our very, very rich region so that we can solve societal challenges, whether we are talking about the green transition or digitalization, and how we're going to invest in innovations that we have developed here and our strength to solve those problems. Mm-hmm. And when we have a story complete, we also look at the outside world. And that's where my team comes into place, for example. Mm-hmm. So that's how Brabant structures, let's say, its thinking in broad lines.
Yeah. Do you have I get the drift that you have a good tradition with your relations with Brussels, so you're working with Brussels?
Yes, we have a team. So I have colleagues who are based in Brussels, mm-hmm. And they monitor what the European institutions are doing. They are regularly present in Den Bosch, in our governmental building. So it's a continuous dialogue that we observe and we influence. So that's what that's the core activity of the public affairs team. But in my team for international relations, we look at how to form relations with other regions, other countries. We need to know what happens in Brussels. It definitely helps me to do a better job. Mm-hmm. And we reinforce each other. Because I guess the key message that I have for your listeners is that if you want to do European projects, relationships come first and the mm-hmm. calls come after. So when the call opens, you need to have the relationship ready to be able to form a consortium and to draft a really good project. So you're building trust, you're building relations. And this is what my team is doing in a number of ways. Can be bilateral relations, can be relations via a network, for example. And I'm going to explain to you, for example, about the Vanguard network that we are a member of, and my region should do that.
Hold that thought. We'll take that next section. First, so super. What I need from you before we move into taking a deeper cut into the relationships and networks in the Vanguard Initiative. What I just need you to share with the listeners is your role. So now we have a little bit an idea of what the province is doing, their relations with Brussels, the structure and so on. But so your position.
So first of all, imagine a team of roughly 10 people that look at the outside world. How are we going to connect the Brabant economic agenda in terms of innovation, especially with the outside world, the whole world? And we have a number of countries and of topics that we want to focus on. So, for example, I have colleagues who look at Asia, like Japan or South Korea. From the semicon or robotics point of view, I have colleagues looking at Germany. I'm in Team Europe. So I look at European cooperation and more specifically at interregional collaboration. So it's not Netherlands cooperating with Germany, but it is Brabant collaborating with North Rhine-Westphalia or with Lombardia or with the Basque country. So, I also have a second file at the moment, cooperation with Ukraine, because the rebuild Ukraine topic is growing, and the Netherlands is also trying to tap into this topic, and Brabant the same. But we are in a incipient phase in that one. So European collaboration, from my point of view, and European collaboration, interregional collaboration means either bilateral relations. So let's say you go to Munich, you go to Brussels or to Leuven, or you use networks. And I am the one that looks at networks.
Yeah. So you are building relationships, you're facilitating the access
and connecting.
So it's about fertilizing the ground, and being the connector that starts to push things and make sure that collaborations, they continue to be good.
Yes, I connect stories. I connect bits of information to tell a unified story, and then I connect people. And by that I mean I need to understand what happens in my region, what I'm going to tell to the outside world about the economy of Brabant, about specific companies and sectors, what our priorities are. And then I also need to know what other regions are doing, more or less. And I also need to have at least a basic understanding of how Brussels thinks, because that influences the future of our sector. So I have to bring all of that together, and then to bring the partners together. I am a connector, let's say. I'm not a specialist in EU funding. I'm not a specialist in a specific technology, but I'm someone who can connect people, see what they have in common, what's complementary, and then they can work together and write a beautiful project together, ideally with EU funding.
Thanks. Let's move into talking about what is then the frame of that work that you do, because you have an initiative that was initiated a while ago, back in 2010, 11 or something. It's called the Vanguard Initiative, and you're involved in that. So can you fold out what the initiative is and what the core elements of that is in relation to your work?
I think Vanguard is a very interesting package. I would name it package because it's got a number of levels that can form a very interesting package for the regions that are a member of it. So some time ago, I don't know, maybe it was 12 years ago, a number of European regions decided to work together on the topic, broadly speaking, of Industry 4.0. And the core or underlying all this was the concept of the smart specialization, whereby the Commission usually asks a region if they want to receive structural funding, what are you good at? And how can you be complementary to each other? So these regions, for example, Brabant, Flanders, Lombardia, the Basque Country, etc., they decided to work together, and not just to meet and talk, but to do projects together under certain topics. For example, smart manufacturing, or hydrogen, or smart health. And besides that, they are also working together. And that's what, for example, my colleague in Brussels is doing, is to speak to the European institutions and tell the story of these regions. We collectively have identified that we have this common story that we want to tell. This is what's important for our stakeholders, for our clusters, for our SMEs. And we would like to influence the European Commission, for example, into doing this or that for us. And now we have completed this package, this layers of the network, by adding a very, very interesting subsidy or financial instrument that works as a common pot. So a few of the regions are putting money together to finance some of the projects, which are a stepping stone to EU funding, for example.
Now we need to maybe take a step back for the listeners to hold them in the hand here. So first and foremost, smart specialization. That is a term that, correct, it started to enter the EU lingo vocabulary around the beginning of the 10s.
I think it was 2010, actually. Yeah.
And the term, you have sort of folded it out here, but just to make it a little, it's simply the idea is, of course, that we cannot be good at everything, everybody. That's the idea so it's the European community idea is that we collaborate. We have cross-border exchange with the workforce, can cross borders, the goods and services, and so on, and each and throughout the continent, the member states, we are all good at something specific. Some have more capacities, are good in different areas, but we're not all good at everything. So the idea is, of course, that we shouldn't be good at everything together. We should specialize and be continuous our path within what we are good at in each specific region, and keep building the capacities within that, and then collaborate with the regions that are doing complementary things that needs to lift up each element, each area, so lifting everybody up. So that's the idea behind that.
Yeah. And not everyone understands the idea, unfortunately. Like I have sat in conferences with different regions presenting their smart specialization strategy, and whenever you see a region presenting 15 priorities, you know something's gone wrong.
That's because it's very difficult for some regions, especially if they have a certain size or self-confidence. It's very different for them to to let go of some of it, so to say. So it's easier for regions that are not in the big urban centers. I'm talking here, Paris, Warsaw, Madrid, and so on. These big urban centers, they have often an issue with realizing that maybe they shouldn't be good in everything.
No, you need to pick. You need to pick and to narrow it down. Otherwise, you're just going to divide your resources and energy in too many places. Bottom line is that the S3 is very useful because it's a common language that regions can speak to each other when they're trying to see how they can align their strengths, and also how they can write the project, because the S3 is mandatory for cohesion funding, for example, and it is also used, although not mandatory, in Horizon.
Yeah, so that's of course important information for the listeners, for understanding what happens with these kind of things, is that the Commission in call text, when you apply for public funding from the Commission, often put these conditions into it. They say, look, that needs to be a smart specialization. There needs to be a callback to strategies. It's not just within a regional collaboration and smart specialization. It's also many other areas. All the small things that comes in the end of a call text, that things needs to be connected to policy papers or initiatives that Commission have started, that needs to be a coherent sort of a thought from the back curtain that the Commission wants on the policy side.
So for example, for your listeners, in case they're thinking about writing a project which falls under structural funding or even maybe Horizon, just have a look at what the smart specialization strategy of your region is saying. As for example, we do get project proposals even in my building, because we are the managing authority for the I3 projects, for example. And we have to confirm that the project aligns with the S3 requirements and topics of our South Netherlands smart specialization strategy. That's how you score the points. So you may have a great project, but also make sure there's an alignment there.
Now, slowly guiding the Vanguard conversation into what is also part, because you mentioned it, that you have put up a call structure also that you can apply for funding from, because that's also part of it, right? That the regions go together in different initiatives within different corners to provide facilitating funding in different corners. So can you explain a little bit about that? Because this is about supporting the regional ecosystems in innovation.
Well, European funding can be rather scary if you think about the paperwork or about finding the right partners, the right amount of partners, and the types of partners that are required, from different regions, different development, different levels of development in regions. So we were discussing among ourselves, the regions taking part in the Vanguard, can we create an instrument that is more SME friendly, meaning less paperwork, where it's easier to find partners and we can help with that. And we thought, okay, why don't we create our own instrument by which every region which wishes to participate can put a certain amount of money together, and we encourage people to apply. So it's like a low threshold, a low hanging fruit, as you would call it. So before you jump into a scary Horizon project, maybe you can just, let's say you're an SME from Brabant, where I am based, and you find a partner in Wales, which is one of the other participating regions, or in Galicia, in Spain, and you write a small project together, and you apply to Vanguard. We tell you, okay, it's okay, write the project, and then the Brabant partner sends the application to me in Brabant. We evaluate the project and we co-finance it at a 50% financing rate. And the partner from, as I was saying, Galicia, for example, they apply to the Galician Regional Authority, and they get funding from there. So we are now at our third call. So we started in 2024. And every year we get a growing number of very interesting inter-regional projects focused on innovation, TRL 6 to 8. Because we are very much focused on that type of TRLs. And we have very, very interesting projects related to smart health or AI, smart health and AI. Now, we're now noticing that AI is permeating every single topic. Hydrogen, 3D printing, energy, and so forth.
Yeah, and these funding structures. It's a little bit, the Eureka Eurostars probably also from your chat. They have it.
I know of it, but I don't have experience with it.
It
myself.
is the same way that it works, and they're very popular for the reason exactly this, that it's the threshold is lower. Sort of the barrier and the bottleneck to get to the funding is lower. The administrative bureaucracy is funding bureaucracy, so to say, is less. So it's more accessible. Yeah. It's more relatable for especially these tech SMEs that have no at all, idea of what a funding bureaucracy can be like, which is massive when you step into Horizon Europe, for instance. It's a totally different world. So this is it's very good. Always, and I always said that also when I was a facilitator myself, helping companies to go towards funding. Say, look, try national funding first. Try to see how it works, how you tick with this public funding world, where it's sort of a sandbox. They try it out and see how does it work. International collaboration also. How is it to work together with another entity from a different region and culture and so on. So well
like
done.
Dip your toes, and then you can go for a swim. That's the logic, I would say, and our interest. So in the team for international relations, internationalization is not the goal itself. We are trying to mobilize people, to galvanize interest, and then eventually they have the courage to speak to others and then form a consortium, first a small one, then a bigger one, because ultimately we want access to bigger and bigger pots of money, ideally European money, to work on a common problem.
Look, the companies don't give a rat's ass about internationalization. They care about they have innovation, they have technology development, they have a business, they have something that they would like to develop, and then it makes sense sometimes to take off the risk
when they cannot find the right testing facility or the right hospital. And the right pot of money, then it becomes interesting. That's true. It's not a goal in itself, like I was saying.
This is about taking the risk off, because that's that's the core issue with funding, right? It takes the risk, it de-risk an investment. Yeah? So they don't crash the company by investing in an idea. So that's the core element when it comes to all funding. Thanks.
Yeah, and we've had very, very interesting projects so far, because I don't know, I would imagine that maybe your listeners are curious about also what type of projects that we do.
Give an example. Yes, can you share something before we move into talking about relationships?
So there's one that comes to mind. So first of all, we receive a lot in the area of smart health. That's not a surprise, because we are an area which specializes in that. It has a tradition, if we go back to Philips, and let's say medical equipment and everything around it. And in Brabant, you could say you got the medical technology here in the south, in the area of Eindhoven, but we've also got the pharmaceutical industry. And one of the interesting ones we funded was about heart failure, which is, it's a huge problem in Europe. For the patients, people die, and and also it's very costly. Think about the time you spend in hospital. I'm thinking about insurance. So I'm very happy that we had a very interesting SME from the high-tech campus here in the southern part of Brabant, and they found a partner in the Welsh region. And they are now working together on wearable technology and explainable AI. And what they do is that they detect deterioration earlier and allow patients to stay at home a bit longer. So we basically managed to find complementary expertise in Brabant and Wales, and to fix to hopefully fix a big societal problem in Europe, which costs a lot of money and leads to a lot of pain to people who suffer, basically, and who lose their loved ones. So that's a very interesting project. So because health is a big concern for everyone, but you can also look at industry, and we take part also in the topic of 3D printing in the Vanguard network. So we work with a lot of stakeholders, and occasionally you get very interesting projects there. So everyone is talking about the dirty air, in Europe and around
pollution.
factories. So one example could be that you combine, Brabant expertise from an SME to a Flemish university to develop a 3D printed catalytic structure that reduces energy consumption in industrial air purification. Cleaner air. Everyone wants cleaner air. And with this, I also want to say that the projects can be very, very technical. And I live in a professional world where we talk a lot about technology, but ultimately it is so beautiful to see it explained to the outside world. Hey, this is how we're using taxpayers' money. We're giving, let's say, 150K to this company from our region, which works with another region, and they solve a problem that affects millions of people. And I think that's a very beautiful part of it, when you actually manage to tell a story about something good you've done with the public money using technology.
That's why I have started up my science communication podcast, Concept Explain Science. You're invited in with any of these if you want. If you want
Thank you so much.
if you want any of these people that work with any of these projects, if they want to join that and share what they do, you can throw an invitation.
No, absolutely. I live in a very geeky area. Like Eindhoven is known for its geeks. We say we live in the Brainport area.
I remember that. Yeah, Brainport.
Yeah, that comes from brain. We are very brainy here. But on a serious note, there's an appetite for technology in Brabant with focuses in different areas. And I think it's our duty as civil servants, as the government, to show that to the world and to find the complementary partners and to do interesting projects together.
But it's also a strong image for the region.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's intelligent. If you can get that as an image for any region, it's a good image to attract people to come and join. You yourself have moved there, right? So it's
I ended up here accidentally, but many people come here specifically because they get a chance to work in a very interesting area. This is one of the most innovative regions in Europe. Having also work-life balance. This is actually something that in our economic agenda we sell to the outside world, to the potential talent arriving here. The Dutch are really good at work-life balance. Like I've never worked in an environment where there's so much respect for your free time. And after working in Brussels and in other countries, I'm deeply grateful of that. But it's definitely a strategy to attract the right international talent, which is much needed. And it's not just about attracting people who work in the big or small companies here, but we're also seeing a large number of internationals setting up companies. I just spoke to an Indian lady who set up an AI platform and got substantial amount of funding. I was talking to another Indian gentleman setting up another company, or Spanish, Brazilian. There's so many nationalities coming here because they know they can work on something interesting. And there's also this tradition of open collaboration here, which is, you can see it on the high-tech campus. Even the way it's built, it invites people to come at lunchtime in the very center of the campus and meet. And that physical proximity creates the cognitive and the social proximity. Philips decided, okay, we're going to open up this space. We're going to let other companies set up shop here and talk to each other. And that, I think, is the selling point, or one of the selling points of the cultures that I have found here, even as a foreigner. It's the level of sharing it is beautiful to observe. And I think that can generate projects and can be a lesson for other regions as well. I don't think you can copy, like really import the model of Brainport or Brabant,
No, that's
but you
culture.
can take inspiration of how over time it builds something like this.
No,
And it
it's
starts
really,
with an open mind.
yeah, but it's culture. It's his historical development. So it's a lot of things that this connects to. I've been to the university in Eindhoven. It's a very nice place. I like it as well. So it's exactly as you describe here. It bridges us into the next section here about relationships, because these things are connected, right? So you are a relationship
Therapist.
master relationships, and you emphasize this in our pre-talk, how much relationships they mean, how important they are in relation to what we're going to. So to all these things that we just talked, there are stages before these things before you have the initiatives, you have collaboration models like this, like Vanguard, like you have things that the region wants to do. They have strategies of collaborating and so on. But to be able to do this, like everything is put into a frame of relationships. So we're going to talk about in the next section about the importance of those relationships, how you work with it, and then the next section after that we're going to talk about what it does to the lobbying part. But first, relationships before proposals, right?
Yeah. So it might be tempting when you hear about EU funding to instantly think, oh, there's a Horizon call which opened, there's an I3 call which opened. But actually, the work that I do comes way before that, and I think I would mention two steps. First of all, let's say you want to apply to a call, but you need partners for it. You need a project idea. And then also before that, you want to make sure you have the right instruments, that the call fits the needs of your region. And when it comes to the relationships, yeah, my team specializes in identifying the right partners, other like-minded regions or countries, clusters, and then investing in those relationships. My colleagues, for example, they go frequently to different German Länder. How do you call them?
The regional, regions,
different German regions, and or to Asia or to Austria or the Nordic countries or France, for example. And it's very important to invest in these relationships, to meet regularly, to discuss, okay, we are good at this, you are good at this, how can we meet and do projects together, or how can our companies meet? And this is what I mean by relationships. And once you have those in place, then ideas come forward and you can apply for funding. And you can do it bilaterally, or like I said before, you can do it via networks such as Vanguard or ERIN. And I think I would also mention a third type. We were talking earlier about smart specialization, the one created in 2010, more or less. And the European Commission also created the smart specialization platforms for different topics.
Yeah.
And we have several stakeholders in the Brabant region, for example, clusters specifically, that get involved in these platforms set up by the Commission. And in these platforms, they discuss with their counterparts from other European regions. So they have already found each other, and they are giving input to the European Commission about what they notice, what they need. They meet regularly. And that's another source of creating relationships that then translate into consortia at European level.
Yeah.
From the Brabant side, I know there's, for example, the agri-food capital cluster that is involved, or the sports and technology cluster. And it's a great opportunity to come in direct contact with the European Commission and other stakeholders. And then the money just comes in because you've met your partners, you've created the trust, and you speak the language of the European Commission. You know about smart specialization. You know how to formulate that proposal so that it just tickles the person reading the proposal.
Just before we move into how to massage the Commission. Now you have categorized this perfectly. So what it does is that when you move together in a formalized collaboration like Vanguard, and when it's a lasting collaboration, because you have many things that often these things have funding with it, and then when the funding falls away, then these things wither. But the Vanguard Initiative is a lasting collaboration, and it's a lasting group, and it has also grown. Started with 10, now you're 30. So you have invited people, and I remember, because the region of South Denmark, in which office I was sitting in when this initiative started, I think they applied to join, but they didn't. They were sort of involved in shaping it, but they didn't move into it. And I don't know if it was because they were not accepted in, or if there was money they had to provide. There was something. It was sort of an exclusive 10 that started this, and so it has grown. But the thing is, what I want to say is that it has lasted, and it is being perceived as a galvanized unit. It's committed regions that has been curated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this means something when it comes to the leverage that you have when you start discussing with the Commission, because I remember that the Commission was very, what's going on here? No, but it's very important. It was noticed by the Commission. Interesting. And at an early stage, there was sort of, because the Commission wanted its smart specialization strategy to work. There's three thing there. Yeah, they wanted the commissions to come along. Yeah, so the Vanguard Initiative was a mirror to that, answering to what the Commission wants, but at the same time, it was because of the strategy of curating it. The Commission sort of perceived it as an very important initiative that they really wanted to talk to and discuss and come with input, right?
So while the Commission is, let's say, in charge of organizing and collecting input from its own S3 partnerships, platforms, what Vanguard does is that it gives the power to the regions. And that's, of course, in the interest of my regional government. So it is us, the regions, that decide how we're going to approach certain topics, what projects we're going to do. And we also took the initiative to create this funding instrument that would mirror our interest. Because, for example, if we go back a little bit in time, we are now in the MFF 2021-2027. But before that, we were talking with the Commission. So it was people from my team with public affairs, with different clusters in our region. We were talking to the European Commission and the Parliament saying, hey, we need a regional instrument which focuses on innovation, TRL 6 to 8. Please create something like that. And they did. They created initially in the first phase in the first budget proposal, it was something called C5, Component 5. But what happened in the trilogues, in the negotiations between Parliament and Commission and the Council, was that that fund became what we now know as I3. So it is still an interregional innovation instrument, but what was added to it was this cohesion element. And for a region such as Brabant, for example, which really goes full speed ahead innovation, that's not ideal. We did not want necessarily this cohesion element to it. We just wanted to focus on innovation. Whereas with Vinovate, we can really focus on top things and make it easy. We don't need 5 partners from 5 different regions. You need minimum 2. And if you can apply it, and if you apply as a Brabant company with the project to me, then it's very easy paperwork, so it's a way to show the Commission that you can also do it in a more simple way. So I really hope that after we do this 3, 4, 5 years, we have a nice portfolio of projects that we can show to the Commission to say, hey, this worked. You can also do it in a different way. That's the ideal scenario.
What you can say, what I always say is, when you stir in the soup, you always have meatballs that comes up on the top. Yeah,
I like that visual.
Yeah, but it's true, and it's funny because it's true. Because the thing is, what you do with an initiative like this, you've been doing this for quite some years now, right? And what has been happening is that first and foremost for your work, I bet you that you have, in connection with the initiative, has complemented your work to have suddenly things come, collaboration patterns coming up that you wouldn't have had without this. Giving opportunities to your stakeholders, the SMEs, the knowledge organization, right, the universities and research and so on. And then, as the collaboration has moved on, not only collaborations, but then you also offer suddenly funding that can further push things forward, like the ones you have explained here. That, the more you do of these things, the more connections you have across the continent, the more strategically important connections your region will have with what is for the regional government is important in attracting interest and investments and collaborations and networks to the Brabant region.
Yeah, and it can lead to surprising relationships because of course we have an agenda that we have collectively written about which would be our priority countries in the whole world and also in Europe. But with Vanguard, we have allowed we have enabled our stakeholders to find partners that we wouldn't necessarily have considered. We seem to be working very well with Wales.
Wales is nice. Never been to Wales.
Yeah. I see multiple projects with the Italian regions. Flanders, it's a usual suspect. It's bordering us, so it makes a lot of sense.
There's also a lot of technology there, right? On health. Pharma.
Yeah, and also ultimately, beyond the projects, it really allows us to speak with one voice in Brussels on things that affect all of us, more or less in the same way. Like, for example, we noticed in the current discussion on the upcoming multi-annual financial framework, the S3 is not mentioned. But we value the S3. It's the core of Vanguard. And besides the fact that it's the legal framework for carrying that conversation for structural funding, it is the common language. That's what we're actually fighting for. We want to speak the same language, and we want to be focusing on what we're good at. Don't waste the energy. Rather combine sources and energy to achieve that strategic autonomy that we so often hear about in Brussels and in beyond, and creating the value chains. because we're looking at scalability, like combining resources and making something bigger. And Vanguard allows us to do that. And maybe useful for the listeners to know that us regions, we pay to be part of Vanguard so that the stakeholders, companies, universities, and so forth, can freely access the Vanguard services. And that can be webinars, can be physical meetings where they learn about, could be EU funding or other sources, other opportunities for collaboration. We have a database called the Gateway. And the Gateway is like a Tinder for companies. And I use that term because I know people will actually remember it that way. You can search in that database after you make an account for like-minded partners that maybe use a specific technology and they're based in a certain region. At European level, we have the EEN network, Enterprise Europe Network, with which the European Commission intended to create this tool for SMEs to find partners everywhere in the world. Yeah. So for Vanguard, we have our own database, like focused on our regions and the stakeholders, either companies or knowledge institutes or universities based there that can find each other. So it's an extra service that's really valuable for companies. If not, we can just circulate among ourselves. So we have also done that, receive a request from a region. Hey, we have an interesting project. Can you find someone over there, guys? And I have done that also, and it worked.
Yeah. Now we need to bridge into the lobbying, because we keep circulating around this, right? It keeps popping up when we talk here. So it's because exactly what we circle around, the work you do, the work you try to push for the Commission to be aware of, to have a direction of where the funding goes and how it goes and so on and so forth, is related to what is being put into the concrete call documents and the available funding that is put out there from Brussels. Now, can you share?
Yeah, this is the disclaimer that I have to bring in the conversation. So my institution does lobbying, and it does the lobbying via my colleagues who are based in Brussels. I sometimes go to Brussels for the Vanguard network to speak to the other regions and to receive the story. For me, it's really important to understand what happens in Brussels, because this is how I manage to speak to companies and to explain to them, this is how the Brussels landscape is evolving and how it's going to affect you when you're looking for a partner and you plan to apply for European funding. But it is not me who speaks to the Commission. I collect the priorities of my stakeholders, and then the teams in Brussels, the teams of all the regions in Brussels, they are the ones who are supposed to speak to Parliament, to Commission. So I know more or less what they're doing, but it's not me doing it.
No,
I'm the connector, let's say.
Let me just paint the picture for the listener. So because I've been in that regional framework myself in Brussels. So what you have in Brussels is a cacophony of regional offices. So you have thousands of regional authorities throughout Europe, and many of them have prioritized to have an office in Brussels. And they have different functions. Most of them are policy oriented. They can be very small, 1-2 persons, and often it's related to making sure that policy related things, so European Parliament things related to what is important for that specific region, policy wise, things move in a certain direction. What you have in larger regions, they sort of fold out the portfolio also to what we're talking about here. So funding corner and the interconnection between policy and funding, where things are moving. So that's in the corner. So Brabant is big enough to have people enough, resources enough to also cover that area, right? So this is what we're talking about here, just to paint set the frame.
I think you could also say that Brabant has the mentality to follow and then act upon what it observes, and also to either mobilize stakeholders, or at least, or also the stakeholders here are already in the sort of mindset to know that they need to be in Brussels. And I'm talking about companies, universities, the city, okay, we do it from the government side, but the big tech companies in the city where I live, for example, they're not going to wait for the government. They are there. They're in the offices of members of European Parliament, or speaking to the Commission where we talk about the Chips Act or the Biotech Act. So they're not waiting for us on that
at
one.
all.
But there is definitely the mentality, and I like that, coming from a country where I've often heard the rhetoric, oh, Brussels is telling us to do this. Of course, not everyone saying that, but you do hear that rhetoric in certain countries. This is a region which takes matters into its own hands. And of course, the geographic proximity helps. You go to Brussels and you speak to different partners. And we have a team doing exactly that to represent our story.
Listen. This is the discourse of the editorial line from this podcast is that Brussels can seem like a big animal, but the Commission is a very open institution. Anyone that has a case, anyone that has something they want to share with the Commission, or point they want to make, the Commission is always listening. I've never seen a Commission official say, we don't want to hear what you have to say.
And I can also give you the example from the Parliament side. When I worked as an advisor to several politicians in the European Parliament, it was our job to read those emails coming in from different regional governments, associations, or concerned citizens, to give them a reply, to set up a meeting and take that input. Because how are you going to be able to draft or amend the European legislation if you don't speak to the stakeholders and take in and do an average, of course, taking into account your political orientation, whether you're left or right or in the middle, and that's why you're there for, to take that input in. And I actually find that a very beautiful part of the job, to learn what people need from you, what associations, from the transport, from drivers association to the trucks manufacturing, etc., etc. I'm saying this because I was in the transport, for example.
Alina, what is important for us to talk about in this section is the strategic long light that you need to invest. So the investment is per se putting on the long light on your truck, if you want to stay in that vocabulary. So this is and you shared with me in the pre-meeting that work that you've been doing for many years back, massaging, resulted in concrete results in court. So can you share a little bit about that timeline for people to understand the importance of this?
Yeah, you were just saying that Brussels can be a maze. It can be a big, scary animal. But until you chop it into pieces, I would say.
Exactly.
But on a very serious note, when I think of Brussels, I think of a triangle of people, timing, and process.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of these three things. And what you're asking me now is basically about the timing. My job is to have in my head a clear timeline of when things happen and when those things might impact the stakeholders in my region. Exactly. And if we're talking about EU fund, we talk about money. Like when does the money become available? That's one thing, that's the calls. But when is the Commission creating the calls? So I think it is strategically important to be there in a conversation with the European institutions when they are only just beginning to think how to put the next MFF on paper, what topics they're going to approach, how they're going to structure the budget, etc., etc. And For a region such as myself, that means, okay, let's look at what we're doing now. How can we get that funded? And then we're going to go into a conversation with the commission, for example, or parliament, depending on the stage where you are, about how we're going to convey that story. And the perfect example is the way we have created the I3 instrument using the Vanguard network, for example. So we were noticing in our region that there is a gap, when we talk about TRL 6, 7, 8. We want to finance innovation. We want to finance this idea of ecosystem that happens at regional level. And there are other regions in Europe who think in the same way. So it is via this platform, Vanguard, that we managed to speak with one voice towards the Commission to say we need an instrument that reflects this reality on the ground in Europe. And guess what? It came. It did not come exactly in the form we were hoping for, but it did come because, after all, the MFF is a huge negotiation between so many forces. So it was no longer 1 billion component 5. It was 500 million I3 under cohesion, with two strands, one more focused on innovation, one more towards cohesion. But it's there. So my message to people is that you need to be aware of the timeline to be able to, and then identify the people to start influencing, so that it's when the calls open, later, when they actually exist, they will reflect your interests, so your stakeholders can apply and benefit from that funding. Yeah. That is a strategic thinking. If you're just waiting for the call to open, from my point of view, you've lost, or you're not.
Or at least you've lowered your chance.
Yeah. So people, timing and process. And by process, I mean, okay, that there's another holy triangle. You have the commission at the top, publishing, and then it goes, the piece of legislation goes then to parliament and then to council, and they work in parallel on it. And then they meet in the so-called trilogue, the Holy Trinity, and they reach the final conclusion of what a European piece of legislation is going to look at. But our work in the regional government needs to start way before that. You need to identify your priorities, identify what is your smart specialization, what are you good at, and write a convincing story. What makes you special, and then go and just break those doors. In Brussels, using also your partners. So my team is instrumental in finding the other regions, the other partners, so that we know, okay, this is who thinks more or less the same. And then our team in Brussels can go and really be hardcore lobbying on the topic.
And you know what? Because I did work like this myself. And by the way, I am going to make a lobby series, and I think I need to invite you in for some parts of that series now, because it's very tangible. It's actually very tangible. It's very finding. So I like your picture of a triangle: person, people, triangle, people, process, and time, because it's exactly this. You need to understand. So what is the timeline? So what's the time frame to reach the goal? What is important on that timeline? So what is the process within that timeline, within those milestones in that timeline, and who are the persons I need to talk to influence that process on? And it's very
a lot of mind mapping.
It's very tangible. You sit there, and then you identifying these pieces, reaching out, and then when you're in Brussels, you simply go to their office with your briefcase, and you have a conversation. How does it work? And then you sort of map. You say, bring that with you back home, and then you talk to your stakeholders. You talk to your interestees, and find out how do we attack this, and so on and so forth. So it's very super. Well done.
I think once you understand the circularity of the process,
Yeah.
It makes more sense and it becomes more digestible. It is a complex system, but if you visualize it like this as a triangle, it makes your life easier. And you also need to be bold, a good strategist, would have the courage to send that email.
Oh yeah.
And to call if the person has not replied, then you call. I think that's what you're supposed to do. But we're digressing into lobby and straying from international relations.
And probably being from the Balkans, you probably have that in you, your boldness. I had to teach myself. I had to get used to it. I'm a Scandinavian, but a slight tendency to being introvert, so I had to teach myself that role too. But I got it, and as soon as I got out there, I managed.
We are bold in the Balkans, but unlike you, the Nordics. For example, in Romania, because that's where I'm from, we do have an appreciation of hierarchy. Let's put it like that.
That's true.
I think that's the opposite of what I have found in the Netherlands, for example. So, and I really like the way the Dutch work is this flat hierarchy. It doesn't mean I don't have a boss and that my boss does not have a boss. It's just that it's a different type of relationship, more flat. And I think the benefit of that is that it allows for information to circulate a bit faster between different levels of people.
Yes.
That increases efficiency and creates a very nice working space. So as much as I love my country and my culture for a number of reasons, I think the strong hierarchy sometimes hinders the flow of information. So that in practice, that boldness that we have and directness is blocked at times by the hierarchy, which blocks the flow of information.
And the reason why I'm nodding is because my life partner is Romanian, so I know exactly what you're talking about here. But I think, I was just thinking, the boldness you find, you find yourself very well in Netherlands, because me and my experience with Dutch is that they're very direct.
Yeah.
So you find the perfect environment for you there. So if you manage the cultural hierarchical the issue there, if you can sort of put that aside, then you have a boldness that Dutch appreciate, because they are themselves very bold and direct. and then
I found my match.
And then you have a flat hierarchy, so you get things done.
Yeah, indeed. Where there was maybe a little bit of a clash is that I work more, maybe more informally. I call more than send an email, for example. So there had to be some adjustments and minor clashes, let's say. The only thing I can do is like to tell people up front that it's never a bad intention, or it's never the desire to position myself. It's a genuine desire to get things done. And I'm navigating the cultures for sure.
Now, this conversation, it's difficult, dear listener, to detach such a conversation here from also cultures. And this is what we have stepped into now. It is indeed psychology. This is human psychology. It's
cultural awareness.
Work with lobbying, with networking, with relationships, and so on. So, Alina, we're a little bit over time, but I didn't want to stop this conversation because it's very nice.
I think it's been very fun.
Now we have two things left. First and foremost, do you have any reflections or advice you want to share with the listeners, people that are in the same position as you?
I cannot stress enough what I actually already said in the beginning, that relationships come first. Whether we talk about bilateral intergovernmental relations or the lobby that you might do in Brussels, is very much about relationships. And I dare say it's also about storytelling. You need to be able to tell the story of the region that you represent with a beginning and an end. This is your tradition. This is where you're coming from. This is where you're going with the technology that you're investing in. And invest in the relations, keep in touch. And then you can much easier find the right people to form a consortium and write a project together and apply for EU funding. And the second thing is that before you look at the monster of EU funding straight into the eyes, be aware there's more accessible ways to get closer to that. A network such as Vanguard can facilitate that for you. And the Vinnovate instrument that we have created is a stepping stone towards EU funding. There's also other networks. And now lots of people also talk about Semicon. There's a new network like the ESRA network for regions interested in Semicon technology. So find the structures that function in your sector and invest in those as well. So I think those are my key takeaways. Yeah, relationships and storytelling. Yeah.
Now, I can see here in the rundown I sent you for the toughest challenge, I left the old one from another episode in. So I'm gonna ask you to improvise. So the toughest challenge, what is the toughest challenge in your, when in your day-to-day work with this? What is the one thing that is scratching you the most?
It is difficult to narrow it down to the essence because I'm combining two very big worlds. On the one hand, I'm dealing with people that understand my region very well and they know a sector in depth, but they know nothing about the European world, let's say. And the European world includes Brussels and how the institutions there work, and also how other regions work. So they're very region-minded. And then if I deal with EU-based people, then they have a very limited understanding on what happens on the ground. So my challenge is to understand both worlds and to help them speak to each other in a way that makes sense to both of them. But at the same time, I find that to be the beautiful part of my job. I am also a believer in the idea that you have to look at the world with curiosity. And it helps me to live by this philosophy. I try to understand, okay, what are the companies in my region doing and why? What problems are they solving? And then how is Brussels thinking about that? Do they align? And if they don't, why don't they? What are the forces that lead to the particular narrative to be structured? Never forgetting also that I'm a civil servant, so my job is to serve the public interest in between. So I'm not representing a company, I'm representing the citizens that pay taxes, and they want to see their problems, which are about how to live longer, how to live a better life, how to breathe cleaner air. So the way we spend our money, the way we increase collaboration to maximize chances for EU funding has a direct impact on people's lives.
You know what? It's what I have learned throughout the 4 years I've been doing this podcast and talking to. I've had 140, 150 guests through this virtual podcast show, right?
Quite impressive, yeah.
And what there is a quite common denominator from the roles, no matter what corner you sit in, as a research manager in university, as a facilitator in an office in Brussels, as a regional representative like yourself, it's the translator role. You constantly translate between different worlds on many levels. translating concretely texts, translating worlds to each other, translating perceptions, translating, navigating in between different environments and communities, and making them understand and connect with each other and so on. So that's and that is, of course, it's always a challenge to be a translator.
Yeah, but I think if you're passionate about internationalization and Europe in general and people, I think it's a perfect job.
Yeah. On that note, it's a good end note. We will need to round this up. So, what I'm just going to land the plane before we say goodbye to listeners. So, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to the end. I truly hope you like this. You like this nice exchange and conversation. If you like this, go to my website, thegrant.eu. You'll find tons of podcast episodes there. Not everything about regional collaboration and funding for that, but you will find lots of funding also in this corner. You will find scroll through, and when you're there and you think, wow, this is fantastic, how can I support this guy, you can do that by connecting and connecting to my online my email list. There's an online form on each page you'll find in there, so thanks in advance for that. It's the best way to support an independent podcaster like me. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where the fun happens. That's where the flow is. That's where I like stuff. That's where I pick up lots of my guests, like Alina here. Niels Studervind, I'm the only guy with that name in the world, so you should be able to find me. Also, go and like my The Grant page on LinkedIn. That's where I try to channel a lot of my flow. So, yeah.
And thank you for having me. Thank you, Niels, for picking me up on LinkedIn. Thank you to the listeners for staying until the end. If they listen to this, then they listen till the very end. And I hope it was a nice story from one corner of Europe doing interesting things.
It was so nice to have you in, Alina. Thank you so much. And it's not the last time. So I know you're a busy person, but there will be indeed issues that we need to have a conversation about as I move on. So
absolutely.
Alina, let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Yes, goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You will find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Alina's LinkedIn site and a link to the Noord-Brabant region website. You will also find a link to the Vanguard website that we talk about in the episode. Next week, it is finally time to get an introduction to the Interreg funding scheme. You can indeed look forward to that.